Fantasy Football, RSVP. I'm Dean Curry. Oh, let's get right to it now. For the waiver wire, Week 16, Week 17, we have the playoffs. We have pandemonium running wild. Some people are playing for their championship, and they really need to get some good advice, and I think I have it for you this week. So we'll pay attention, and I will share it with you right now. Aaron Jones actually went down for the Green Bay Packers, and Jamal Williams is probably available on your waiver wire. You may want to consider picking him up. He's a very good play. They're going to use him in the passing game with the new coaching staff. They're going to use him with the running game with the new coaching staff. I really think that he would be a really great play going against the Jets in Detroit over the next 2 weeks for waiver wire Week 16 and Week 17. If you have a Week 17, some leagues do and some leagues don't, so I'm including both weeks. There is a play a lot of people have been asking me about, Jeff Wilson. I really don't care too much for they have a very tough schedule coming up against Chicago and the Rams. I really don't think you want to play Jeff Wilson against the Bears. I know that Breida, is going to be out probably, and he re-aggravated his injury, so he's out. And, when I say people are out, just check the injury report, because, a lot of times people are supposedly, oh, he's done for the season, and then all of a sudden you find out he's not done for the season. It's actually going to play. So you want to actually consider really up to the last day, and I'll be posting some things as well on the injury report. But Jeff Wilson, I really don't like the play. Normally it would be a nice play because they do use the running back a lot in San Francisco. But game scripts, you have to think outside the box. You just can't follow numbers and analytics. You have to kind of trust instincts and think of things like, and that's what we do here at Fantasy Football RSVP. We think outside the box. And Jeff Wilson, the 49ers, probably a good chance against Chicago they're going to be behind, which means they'll probably abandon the run to a certain extent. And that will also, I think, hurt his numbers. And, these are ideas. Sometimes, you find out and you give advice and you say, you play a person for all the right reasons, like Dak Prescott last week was playing him for all the right reasons, and he just threw up a very low number. And people say, is Dak, that happens. And anyone who watched the game, they actually got a field goal blocked. Dallas did with Dak Prescott. And after they got a field, they went for it several times on 4th and 1, and each time they weren't getting points, and that's why it winded up being a blank. If they had gotten the field goal, if they had gotten a couple of those 4th and 1s, and they just kept going for it, it could have been a totally different game. I mean, even Amari Cooper had several throws thrown to him that were overthrown. And, Dak's been connecting on that. And if he connects on one or two of those, Cooper was gone. And that could have totally changed his numbers. So I'm bringing up Dak Prescott, and I'll get back to running backs, because people see a bad number and they say, oh, I'm not going to play him, and, oh, why did you recommend him? Well, it was a good play. He's playing a soft defense. Dak has been lighting it up, and it was just a game of inches of his numbers being, Amari Cooper was gone in one play. They get some points, keep the drive going. It could have been a totally different, game script. And one thing about Dak Prescott is he usually plays well after he plays really poor. But again, you can't, when you play someone for the right reasons, okay, and the person doesn't do well, you can't, for lack of a better phrase, you can't, sit there and pout about it or, get upset. You played the right person in the right situation. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Michael Jordan, greatest player of all time, probably, in basketball. He missed a few shots too, And, so you never want to feel like, oh, why did I play Dak Prescott? Like this week, he's going up against Tampa. That's a play. that's the definite play. Dak will come back, and the team was embarrassed, and he always plays well. And overthrowing Amari Cooper a couple of times, he's been hitting that play, and next game he'll probably hit it, and they'll get their, offense going, and I expect him to have a really big week, and I highly recommend him to play. But as far as, I just wanted to bring up that point, as far as like a Jeff Wilson, I would probably back off that. The Bears have just been too good on defense. And Jeff Wilson have a good game? Sure, he could have a good game. I mean, these things happen. But not playing him is the right call, whether he has a good game or not. Someone you might want to take a look at, if you're really desperate for a running back, you might want to look at Elijah McGuire of the Jets. Normally, I was staying away from a lot of the running backs with the Jets, only because their quarterback, their coach, tends to platoon a lot. And it's always kept me from really recommending Jet players, whether it's, Crowell or whomever. And but everyone's injured, so with everyone injured, you want to basically go with Elijah McGuire because he's like the last of the Mohicans, and you want to play him. So I would probably go with Elijah McGuire because in a PPR league, I should probably bring up a lot of the advice I give is for PPR leagues. And, so just if you have a standard league, it's kind of hard to make a, podcast to say for standard play this one, for PPR make this one. Most of the leagues out there are tending towards PPR leagues. So just factor in when I'm giving, recommendations or advice or, try this or that. I'm basing most of my information on PPR leagues. So if I'm, recommending an Elijah McGuire, it's because he's been catching the ball a lot out of the backfield. Not a lot, but 3, 4, 5 catches out of the backfield. And he gets, yards. But if you're playing a standard league, you may want to, if Jalen Samuels is still out there, he might be a better, play if Connor isn't playing, but it looks like Connor will play this week. Keep an eye on the injury report. A lot of these videos I make are Monday, sometimes on Tuesday, and a lot changes. People don't listen to the podcast to Friday or Saturday and say, oh, why is he recommending that guy? He's on the injury. Well, he went on the injury report Thursday or Friday. So, just factor those things in, and always do your due diligence with checking on players. Sometimes they hurt themselves in practice. It's not even from the game. So you want to look at that. Kalen Ballage on Miami with Frank Gore out also may be a decent play. He had a really big week. They were showcasing him, and they're going against the Raiders. So you might want to look at that as well. But keep an eye on the James Conner situation. Jalen Samuels really was playing well. I wouldn't play him if Conner is actually active, and because some people ask me on social media, do you think Jalen Samuels will probably still have some work if James Conner isn't 100% and only using him for certain counts? No one knows the answer to that question. However, when you look back at the Steelers' running game over the last number of years and you follow it, you could come up with suggestions like, their coach, Tomlin, he usually, if a guy is active, he's showcasing him. Now, can it, turn out that there's sort of a platoon going on and Samuels it can. But again, you can't get upset if you play a person for the right reasons and it doesn't work out, because that's fantasy football, and that's what makes it so hard, and that's what makes it so great and brilliant. And but Tomlin usually will play the guy if he's active, and he'll showcase him. He doesn't really do the platoon. So James Conner's active. I assume he's going to play him, and Samuels would become irrelevant. So, just kind of, weigh that and stuff. There is a play this week that I find quite interesting, and it's all dependent. We're going to move to wide receivers. It's all dependent on if Keenan Allen plays. Now, being, a certified personal trainer for many years and running a sports management company in fitness and massage and all these things and dealing with injuries for better part of 3 decades. It gives me, a certain angle in fantasy football and judging, football players that is a little different than most people, because I've spent the better part of my life working with athletes and getting people back from injuries and dealing with things like hip pointers that Keenan Allen had. Now, it didn't look too good during the game, he went down and it was a hip pointer, and now they're saying he might play this week, or there's a chance he could play. He didn't practice today, Tuesday. But, nobody knows the answer. I'm always giving these podcasts, and then, I'll watch podcasts too and listen to what's out there. And we have people guessing on whether a guy's going to play or not. I mean, to me, unless, you're speaking to the trainer of the, team, and even he won't tell you, because sometimes they like to keep this a secret. No one knows the answer to that question. I mean, give me a break. I think he's going to play. I'm not sure he's going to play. I mean, that's just, to me, for someone to kind of guess that, you could maybe guess if a player tends to like to play injured, or if it's a coach that tends to play his injured players a little bit more than some other coaches. That may be the case, but nobody knows the severity of an injury. They're not talking to the trainer. Trust me, the trainer, if they knew it was his best friend, he wouldn't tell him, because the coach is saying don't say anything. So, I'm never going to speculate on if a guy's going to play or not, because to me, with all due respect, and there's lots of great information out there. You learn from everyone. I learn from my clients and my fans. A fool. You can learn from a fool. My father used to say, but a fool can learn from no one. So you can always learn, from things out there. But one thing that just bothers me is when people are guessing if a guy's going to play or not. I probably have more experience, 3 decades now. I have been dealing with post-op injuries and getting people back from knee injuries, and athletes I'm surrounded by it. I could probably give you an indication, not if a guy's going to play or not, because you have to actually be the doctor to know that information. Just lacks intelligence to kind of, he's going to do this or that. But one thing we can do at my sports management company, Rising Star Enterprises for Wellbeing, and that's a parent company of fantasy football, RSVP, and how they tie together is I've dealt with injuries for a long time. And one thing that, I've dealt with often is hip pointers, and when people get them in injuries and how long it takes. I would be shocked, honestly, if Keenan Allen played this week. And if he plays, it's because it wasn't really a hip pointer. It was just maybe more of a stinger, which is a little different than a hip pointer, because stingers are just something that temporarily shuts the hip down, but it's, really more of a nerve thing, like a nerve was hit a certain way and it planted wrong, and then it just kind of shake it off, and some people maybe have gotten this when you hit your funny bone, and it just kind of goes away. That's sort of that. But a hip pointer is when you actually structurally put some, pressure on your hip in a way that causes inflammation and causes, a serious issue. And hip pointers can take weeks to heal, generally speaking. But again, no one knows the severity of his injury. You could only speculate. And I would watch the report very closely. Personally, I don't think he's going to play, and that's just based on what I know about hip pointers. And that's 3 decades worth. So, if he plays this week, he plays this week, and he got it wrong, whatever. But, my point is you have to start thinking about his chances of playing, to me, are pretty slim. And that's based on understanding how hip pointers work. And I saw him on the field. It didn't look good. And I can't imagine, unless it was, again, just some form of a stinger, that he's going to play. And if he doesn't play, I do have some suggestions that you might want to consider. And they're all on the same team. And they're probably all available on your waiver wire. And they are the Williams brothers. They're not brothers. But the Williams clan on San Diego Chargers. We got Tyrell Williams, who consistently gets more targets than Mike Williams. And naturally, everyone is like, should I play Mike Williams? Should I play Mike Williams? Should I play Mike Williams? And they never mention Tyrell Williams, even though he consistently gets more targets. And in fantasy football, I know you always want to go for the guy who has the more fantasy points, because Mike Williams usually gets like the big play, like the bomb, and the 50-yarder or 60-yarder, and then he also sometimes runs. He ran one in, and who knows, maybe he'll throw one in too. But the thing is he tends to get higher numbers. However, he also tends to get really low numbers. And then you have someone like Tyrell Williams, especially when Keenan Allen is out. His targets tend to climb, and because he's getting more targets, he's getting more receptions a lot of times. And his numbers may not be the big play that Mike Williams is, but he has a higher floor. And what I mean by that is he may not score as high, but he may not be as low. And in fantasy football and the playoffs, you don't want to just have the guy that gets you the big number, but what you really can't afford is to get a 2 or a 3, from a player, because that could mean you lose your championship. And sometimes it's just better or safer to go with the guy, probably give me 10 or 12, maybe I'll get lucky with a touchdown, than a guy, maybe he'll get 30 or maybe he'll get 3. And that's more like Mike Williams. However, with Keenan Allen out, both their numbers are going to climb. So, I could even see a scenario where you play both of them, and they're going against Baltimore, and they have a very, very good defense, and they've just been shutting down people left and right, and and then Denver the following week, and Denver's not been really playing that well. Their pass defense is not too bad, but I got to also believe that there's going to be a lot of dump-off plays in this game because of the pass rush of the Baltimore Ravens. And they just keep coming. So there might be a lot of slot throws to, short throws to Williams, Tyrell especially. He tends to do a little bit better with that scenario. But there's also someone else I'm going to recommend as a tight end who's also probably available, and that is, believe it or not, Antonio Gates. And I think playing this team, they have to win. They're trying to win the division. And I understand the Ravens have a good defense, and certainly they could just shut down the Chargers. But the Chargers also have a good defense, and they're going to have a lot of opportunities because of their defense. And it doesn't really seem like too many teams are shutting down the Chargers defense. And the Chargers defense has gone up. The Chargers offense, rather. And the Chargers offense has gone up against some pretty formidable defenses. And they didn't stop them either. And I'm sure, the Ravens, with their whole situation, they have a good defense. But I like the Chargers giving their offense more opportunities with their defense, which over the last number of weeks, I don't know if anyone's been paying attention, but the Chargers defense has really been stepping up, and I really feel, Rivers is playing his best football, and that just the team is playing well right now. And I really don't, maybe the Ravens neutralize them a little bit, but they're going to have their opportunities, and I really think there's going to be a lot of dump-off plays in this game, short passing. And, Tyrell will get some of those, Mike Williams will get some of those, and you even saw when Keenan Allen went down that all of a sudden he started targeting Antonio Gates. And all year long I was telling people, don't play Antonio Gates, don't play Antonio Gates. But there also comes a time when you have to bury that and play a guy. And I think that's what Antonio Gates will do. Another example, Vernon Davis had a few points, but he was the right play last week. And a lot of people like, you're saying Vernon Davis and, he didn't do that well. Well, again, you're going to miss some shots. But the thing is, and this is why you have to actually watch the games. You can't just watch updates and watch the games and really read up on the game script and read the news on the game. And Vernon Davis went down with a concussion during that game. He had to actually come out of the game. And when he came back, he did come back to the game, but, he missed plays, and that counts. And when he came back, they were being very careful with him. So they started showcasing the other tight end who caught a touchdown. And, these are the types of things. You can't just look at a guy and say, oh, he didn't do well, I'm not going to play him. Well, there's a reason, And that was the reason why they didn't showcase Vernon Davis more. And you got to pay attention to that. That's a good matchup coming up. And the matchup, this is funny because he's going against Tennessee and they're like number one against the tight end. But there were weeks where Tennessee tended to give up plays, and Tennessee, I don't pay a lot of attention. Oh, this guy really does well against the tight end and stuff, because if a team is going to throw to a tight end and they're going to showcase them, which they do, they even did it when Vernon Davis went down and the third string came in, they're going to showcase their tight end. He's going to get his catches. Even against Tennessee, they're a great, team, defense. But I think I'm saying if you have no other play, maybe an Evan Engram if he's available. But I really like Antonio Gates and the Williams receivers this week, even against Baltimore's defense. I think it's a good play if you're desperate. And they'll probably be available on your waiver wire. Another play you may want to consider is Baker Mayfield. He's tailed off a little the last couple of weeks, but he's going against the Bengals defense, and they have just been dead last in giving up, passing, plays. And especially, it's just getting worse and worse each week. And, again, just because he's let up a little, Baker Mayfield, he's a rookie and he's going to back off a little bit. But he's been coming on consistently for weeks now, and I really like playing him. And I really like playing Dak Prescott, this week. He had a rough week last week. He's going against Tampa. But if you need another quarterback and you're desperate, okay, someone who might be available on your waiver wire and could be the steal of the week is Nick Foles. This guy just comes in and he's starting to do it again. And he's going against the Texans defense. And, I get these comments from people saying, oh, the Texans have a really good defense. Well, you got to really pay attention, because in some ways they do, in some ways they don't. And one thing that they have been really falling short on, especially in the last 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, is their secondary. They're giving up a lot of points. And you got to pay attention to this, because when a team, and that's what we do here is, dealing with athletes, dealing with teams, understanding players, understanding injuries, a sports management company like ours, you get perspectives on trends of what players can do and what players can't do. One thing I do as a personal trainer, I understand what people can do and what they can't do when we do workouts or when we train for competitions. And, one thing, you have to pay attention to is when a team isn't going good, and the Texans secondary is just giving up so much points. Sometimes, and as a motivational speaker, I wrote a book on self-help and inspiration and human development. You understand the psyche of people and how things work. And when things are going bad, in a secondary, it becomes a psychological barrier that you have to overcome. And that's why you can't just look at the numbers for the year. You have to understand the numbers in the last 3 weeks, in the last 4 weeks. Because some of those numbers that you're looking at to judge like a defense may have come in the first half of the season. And now, which looked better for the Texans, and now they're just falling off in the secondary in the last few weeks. And then when you're not playing well, you're getting a little banged up, and the injuries are, mounting, and you're just not clicking, there's a psychological barrier where you're just not doing well. And that's what we do here. We try to give you outside-the-box advice that you could really use. And right now, their secondary is playing bad. And Nick Foles is coming in. They have the Redskins the following week. And again, the Redskins secondary was lights out in the beginning of the season. I don't want to play anyone against the Redskins defense. Well, now, their defense, has been giving up huge amounts of points in the last number of weeks. And their secondary hasn't been good in the last 6 weeks. And you got to pay attention to these things. And probably because the offense isn't doing as well with their offensive line, and they're, understanding game scripts and the psychology of how it works, just puts more pressure on the defense. So Nick Foles over the next couple of weeks could actually win you your championship. So you might want to consider picking him up. As far as defense, slim pickings, I'm just going to talk about defenses that are probably available on your waiver wire. You might have the Cowboys defense. It's possible, probably not. But if you have them, play them. If you don't, if they're sitting out there, they just had a bad week. They're going against the Bucks. It's a nice play. If the Titans, I'd be surprised. The Titans have been a really good defense this year. How many leagues actually have the Titans available? So if you don't have the Cowboys available, maybe you have the Titans available. They're going against the Redskins. I really like that play because, the Titans are controlling the ball with Henry going off now. They just blanked the Giants, and I really like the Redskins right now, as a pick against, picking the Titans at home. And the Titans are actually playing well. I mean, I'm not... somebody was saying, watch out for the Titans if they make the playoffs. Well, if Henry's running the way he is, yeah, then maybe. But I don't think they're really going to advance much further. But you never know. When you have a running game and a good defense, sometimes you could. They did it last year in the playoffs. Sometimes you get it done. So we'll see. As far as kicker, there is a kicker I actually really like, and it's Robbie Gould going for gold, and he's going against two defenses that are formidable. Well, one, the Bears, and the Rams actually haven't. But sooner or later, the Rams are going to figure out how to play defense because they have the players, and a lot of guys were banged up, injured, coming back. You got to understand these game scripts of people being injured and coming back. You got to get this type of information and Google it, research it. But Robbie Gould and, at San Francisco, the fact that he's going against the Bears, and the 49ers have been actually moving the ball. They're like plugging people in and moving the ball and playing really well. Chances are they're going to have a hard time getting in the end zone against the Bears' defense. And hopefully the Bears don't blank them completely, which I don't think they will. And Robbie Gould will probably be in a position to kick field goals, and he's been making them not just this year. He's just been making them. Last year, I mean, the guy's just been on fire for his percentage. And this is a year where a lot of guys' percentage in kicking has actually gone down. And we don't spend a lot of time on kickers, here. Eventually, I'm going to, some of the leagues are talking about eliminating the kicker and making it a flex. That's coming up a lot. But I really like Robbie Gould because he's been really consistent, and he's going against a defense that will probably not shut down them completely, and they might be able to have a few field goal opportunities. That might be the difference. So this is Dean Curry here, Fantasy Football RSVP. There's going to be more videos coming out now, next week, even in the off season, twice a week. I'll be having videos talking about the draft, coming up with great conversations to talk about. We have another professional football league, Allegiance of American Football, starting in February. We'll be talking about that. So subscribe to us. Go on our Instagram, go on our Twitter, which is FFootball RSVP, but everything else is fantasyfootballrsvp.com. I'm Dean Curry. Have a great week. I hope you all win. I hope this advice really helps you, and I'll see you soon. Have a good one.